Have you ever felt like you didn't belong anywhere? Like you were living in a place, but not really part of it? This is a story about a boy who felt that way, until the forest gave him a gift he never expected. Before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Theo was a small boy who lived at a riverside mill. The miller and his wife were kind to him. They gave him food and a warm place to sleep. But Theo was not their son. He knew this in the way they sometimes forgot to call him for supper. He knew it in the way they spoke about their past without asking about his. Every morning, Theo swept the mill floors. Every afternoon, he carried heavy sacks to the storehouse. Every evening, he sat by the river and watched the water flow past, going somewhere he would never go. He did not belong to the mill. He did not belong to anyone. One autumn day, the miller's wife sent Theo into the forest to gather wood. The trees were tall and their leaves were turning gold and red. Theo walked deeper into the forest than he had ever gone before. He followed a narrow path that twisted between the roots. The air smelled of damp earth and fallen leaves. Then he heard a voice. It was soft and gentle, like a song. Theo walked carefully through the bushes and saw an old woman. She was kneeling on the ground, pulling herbs and placing them in a basket. Her hair was white as snow. Her hands were wrinkled and rough. She spoke to the plants as she picked them, thanking them gently. Theo stood still, not wanting to disturb her, but a twig snapped under his foot. The old woman turned and looked at him. Her eyes searched his face. Then she smiled, a warm smile that made Theo's chest feel tight. She whispered, "There you are. I knew you would come back." She reached out and touched his cheek with her trembling hand. "You've grown so tall," she said. "I've been waiting." She did not ask his name. She spoke as if she already knew him, as if he had always been hers. Theo should have told her the truth. He should have said he was not who she thought he was, but the words would not come. Instead, he helped her gather the herbs. She spoke to him softly, telling him about the plants, how this one calmed fevers, how that one eased sadness. When the basket was full, she led him to her cottage at the edge of the forest. It was small and crooked, made of old stone and dark wood. Smoke rose from the chimney. Inside, dried herbs hung from the ceiling. The air smelled sharp and sweet. The old woman poured water into a kettle and set it over the fire. She hummed as she worked. She gave Theo a cup of tea and sat across from him at a small table. "You used to love this," she said. The tea was bitter and warm. Theo drank it slowly. The old woman watched him with kind eyes. For the first time in his life, Theo felt truly seen. He returned to the mill as the sun set. That night he lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He thought about the old woman's hand on his face. He thought about the way she had said, "There you are," as if he had been lost and now found. The next day, Theo went back to the forest. He told himself he was only gathering more wood, but his feet carried him to the clearing and then to the cottage. The old woman was sitting outside, mending a shawl. She looked up and smiled as if she had been expecting him. "Good morning," she said. "Did you sleep well?" Theo nodded. He sat beside her on a stone bench. She did not ask him questions. She simply mended her shawl, and he simply sat. The silence between them was not empty, it was full. Days passed. Theo went to the cottage every afternoon. Sometimes the old woman was gathering herbs. Sometimes she was cooking over the fire. Sometimes she was sitting in the doorway, watching the light move through the trees. She spoke to him about small things, the birds, the weather, the way bread rose better when the air was warm. She never asked where he had been or why he had stayed away so long. But one evening, as the light grew dim, the old woman took Theo's hand. "You remind me so much of him," she said quietly. Her voice was softer now and sadder. "My grandson. He had your eyes, your quiet way of listening. He used to visit me every day, and then one winter he did not come, and he never came again." Theo's heart squeezed tight. He looked down at their hands. His were young and smooth. Hers were old and marked by years. He understood now. She had not mistaken him for her grandson. She had needed him to be her grandson, just as he had needed her to be his grandmother. They had found each other in their loneliness, and neither wanted to break the spell. When Theo stood to leave, the old woman pressed something into his hand. It was a small wooden bird, smooth and warm. "He carved this for me," she said. "Now it is yours." Theo walked back to the mill, holding the wooden bird tightly. The river flowed beside him. The mill wheel turned. The world had not changed, but something inside him had. He returned to the cottage the next day and the day after that. He brought bread from the mill. She taught him the names of herbs. They sat together in the clearing, in the cottage, in the soft light of morning and evening. She called him child. He called her nothing at all, because some things do not need names. Winter came. The old woman grew weaker. Theo brought her firewood and kept the kettle warm. One morning he arrived to find the cottage silent. She was sitting in her chair by the fire, her eyes closed, her hands folded in her lap. She looked peaceful, as if she had only just fallen asleep. Theo buried her in the clearing where he had first found her, beneath the trees she had loved. He placed the wooden bird on the grave, along with a bundle of herbs tied with string. He did not cry. He simply stood there as the wind moved through the branches and the leaves fell softly around him. He returned to the mill. The miller's wife asked where he had been. Theo told her about the old woman, about the cottage, about the herbs and the tea and the wooden bird. She listened. When he finished, she put her hand on his shoulder. "You were a good grandson to her," she said. Theo looked up, surprised. "But I wasn't really her grandson." The miller's wife smiled. "You were the grandson she needed, and she was the grandmother you needed. That is enough." Theo understood then. Belonging was not something you were born into. It was something you built, slowly, like herbs growing in the forest, like the river carving its path through stone. It was something you chose, and something that chose you, and it was real, whether the world recognized it or not. He kept the wooden bird in his pocket, and when he swept the mill floors or carried sacks to the storehouse or watched the river flow past, he no longer felt like he belonged to no one. He belonged to a memory, to a season, to a love that was brief but true. And that was more than enough. Sometimes family is not the one you were born into. Sometimes it is the one you find, or the one that finds you. When we give someone our time, our care, our presence, we create something real, something that matters. Even if it is brief, even if the world does not recognize it, it is still true. And sometimes that is all we need. What would you do if you met someone who needed you to be family? Would you stay or would you walk away? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching.